Welcome everyone to Karmic Dynasty this evening. We are here with our brother Buddha, Eternal El Bay, and you will be with him most of this presentation. I will be here assisting as necessary. Buddha, Eternal El Bay, if you would, gratitude.
To Facebook, everywhere we got to go to. It's an honor to be here. I give thanks. And I've had, as we look at it, our past, present, near future, helping us realize what we're into, how we're getting more in tune with it. It's about your science. That's right. It's a time for us to even get a build on. We look at a lot of movies, and in our movies, like my brother, I want to give a great connection to Asir Dukateers. He brought out the comic books for us in the younger generation. How do we look at it and break it down? Yes. Greetings. Yes. Respect. We are about to actually interact on a lot of the energy, like AA Rashid. Thank you, brother, for you also. You give us another bridge to look at even while I was going through this. For those who don't know, go ahead and get your paper, your pen, your writer, utensil, mark it down, write it down. I'm gonna go over right now the connection. How do we know what's the connection? All right, first, before we get into it deep, it's about the Norse god. The Norse god, you want to know about a little bit about their history, look them up. Even for myself, I was Eric, known as Eric the Red, as a Viking. So I was always kind of like, oh, shoot, I'm Eric the Red, So, when you have a calling, your mother gave you a name, right? And then when you look inside your name, you'll find out that there's a deeper part to your name that someone else is probably already bridging. And so now you can see how you basically correlate. And, when someone said, oh, that's your name. Well, that's not your name. That's the frequency that we're on. And so you'll find out these are other lifelines that we can, as they call it, the doppelganger. You'll find out that this is how the world's parallel once and the same. Vikings represents the V and the I. So that's 6. And then you hear kings, Vikings. So it's very important how you look at the movie starting from the beginning. If you look at Love and Thunder, that movie is basically like a saga. So it's just like opening up a comic book. You wouldn't probably know where to start unless you like go back to the beginning. And even in the beginning, they'll show you something that you don't know of. And then you're like, oh man, I gotta get further history or further research to figure that part out. So what we find out is there's Odin, right? Odin is Thor's father. And then we have Loki. And Loki are basically twins, basically not twins. However, it's been written like they're supposed to be twins. And through this movie, Love and Thunder, they give you synapses of the older versions, which were the first versions before that. And they were going through trial and tribulation of finding out about their sister. Now, of course, if I go into that, that kind of like jumpstart the movie. So I'm going to go ahead and start the way it started. The movie starts off where there's this character, the evil, so-called evil character. He's carrying his daughter. And it's kind of like basically you seeing the sun and the moon and you won't know what they're talking about, or Jupiter and Saturn, right? And they're carrying each other. Now, you would think that what is going on is a shadow first that you see. You don't hear no conversation. You see the shadow, and it basically are walking like, looks like as if the girl is on his back. Then you see it where she's in his hands. Now, what we did in our knowing of how we know what are Masonic moves or the language that we know is usually from a left and a right. Now, if you ever notice, left and right is the explanation how you're seeing the movie. Like they might be in the shadow of the left while the other hand is on the right, or one face will be on the left while the other face you're seeing is on the right. So how you're starting out with this movie is you're seeing him basically with his daughter, and he's bringing her like look like to the end of the world, and they're in a so-called like a desert, and he basically puts her down or whatever, and he starts giving homage towards the ancestors. Now he's saying, not for me, not for even the ancestors, do it for my daughter. And he's throwing some verbiage out there, and you're like, oh, what is he talking about? So it kind of gets you in some kind of like, I got to figure out what's going on in this this connection. So at the same time, she's writing, so she's scribing while he's doing the actual speaking. So you're seeing how we do in our own culture, we scribe. So you're seeing that happen. First you start with the shadow. Now you see them in the image. Now they're different constellations on their face. If you notice, the one has lines. The Gord brother, that's the Gord character. He has lines on his face. So in his image, I don't know, he might be Saturn. I don't know. You have to do your own research on that part. And then she's like got craters on her face, like a crater near her eye. And I'm like, wait a minute, is she the moon? So you just got to figure how all that goes. You'll figure that part out. I don't want to give you so much. I'd rather you get into your own research, because this basically opens your mind up more. And so when you see the colors, like my brother Loki, he's got green on. And well, you end up finding out with Thor, he wearing red, he got blue, he got yellow. So you don't really got too much of the strength of what colors he's really emphasizing. And in that one right there, you see him more in the silver color. So this is like another illustration of how the time zones switch from when they're together to when they're not. Now, Loki, he's not in Love and Thunder, even though we're going to talk about Loki, because his explanation towards where he's at is in that right there, that version right there, where they were going through trial and tribulation with each other. And you notice his hair is cut in that version versus how Loki hair is long. And this is where you get an example of the they call it beatnik. Beatnik is a hippie version. So we're going from one who's like militant to now one who got their hair on their head. Not to jump around though, the way that they were showing the killer or the murderer or the killer, whatever you want, God killer, he had no hair on his head. So now we're starting to see one who's like saying, I'm noble, I'm doing as much as I can to basically get in tune with my ancestors. So the girl is in his hand, and the girl is holding a medallion, the same medallion he had in his hand, but on her, right? And she's like touching it. He's really touching it too, but she's like saying, I'm dying. And so now he feel it. Now, of course, they're also, again, left and right. Look at how the Masonic moves are. They usually use left and right. And she might be looking at him, touching on his right side of his left side of the face with her right arm. And it's like, oh man, they're doing a whole bunch of left and right. You wouldn't pay attention until you start seeing what hand is left, what hand is right, what they're doing. Is his knee up? Is his leg down? You'll find a lot of that going on right in the beginning. So you just got to keep your eyes open on that one. What he does is he basically see that she's about to pass away. So he ended up, he buried her and he put stones on her. Now the stones he put like as if he did in meditation, how the chakras are aligned. So that's one thing. The other thing is he laid there until he basically woke up. But when he woke up, how his hands are, he got his right arm, his leg up, his right leg up, his left leg down. I was like, oh, they're going in. So he's hearing something. Of course, you don't know, of course, but you can tell that he looked like he gets up like he's hearing something. So he looks around and he sees his mirage basically, and it's basically eating. So now he's walking, like going into it because he can't believe his eyes. He's touching his eyes. Then it falls into some water. Now he falls forward. See, there's that Masonic move right there where they got the left and the right with the hammer. He falls in the water. He goes forward. Then he falls backwards. Then he gets up, and now he's touching the earth. But when he touched the earth basically punishes him and cuts his hand. It slices his hand open, but yet it heals up quick. So as he's like crawling, he sees food. Then he goes to the food and he starts eating it. Now at that point, he ran into a giant. Now we don't know he's a giant until later on. So now the giant is basically saying, eating up all the fruit, and he's looking at him in disgust. And then, he says, oh, Abu, forgive me. And he drops it and he lowers his head and then he backs up 3 steps back. That's an indication too. This right here, Loki, that's going to be a great analogy when we finally see him from the dark world and how he comes out of that, and the series that he has. So just keep in mind for Loki when I finish getting the drops on Thor. All right, so he basically lowers his head and he's, asking for the mercy of him, and he talks about how he's the last one, and he basically was saying, the world is about to end, so what's next? Basically, are you rejoicing over here? And he was like, rejoicing? We just basically killed the killer, God killer. And so the animals that was around are there's like 3 flower beings, and then there's this one look like a ET, but he got a mask on his face. And then there's somebody behind him that look like they got horns. They all white and they got black eyes. I'm like, yo, this is some mystical stuff. Some, Melchizedek we ain't talking about. So he's still, the God that's standing there before him, or the giant, he's still in a leaning position. So you don't know if he's tall or not, but he has his sun disk behind him. Now, these are great indications to let you know, who's who in this mathematics, just learning the symbols that's going on behind it. So he's like in disappointment because he's like, I did all this work helping out, and, I'm over here thinking that we were doing something to help rejoice. So now he was like, he thinks that there's supposed to be an eternal reward. And he's like, an eternal reward? You ain't getting no eternal reward, And so now he's upset, and he had thrown a piece of fruit at him, called him a dog. And I was like, wow. So he had to go in reverse and learn that the guys, like how we say in our own science, we might run into them and they're like giving us these like good values and all of that. If it's a being, we might not know. So for him, he was like, wow, this is different. I'm thinking of God, but it's like I'm actually running into an actual being. And so that's why he was like, we were actually making a fresh kill. And you think about guys like, was God supposed to be killing? So this is a weird way of introducing this necro sword. He said the necro sword basically has a curse on it and things like that. And it was cursing. It was like you using the blade and getting rid of his entire empire. So for this being what it was, he was like saying, well, then what about us? And then he basically saying they were expendable. So he got upset. And, so he's in his mind, he said, we starved, my daughter died. And, and now at any point he feeling distorted by his thoughts, so disappointed. God of Thunder definitely is the Leo energy. So when you see the Hiru come in, this is like the other profound, okay, this is where it's starting at. But anyway, the giant, he says to him, like, you're supposed to be dying. You're supposed to be dying for us. That's your purpose, dying for your gods. That's the only purpose. And there's nothing to expect but you to die, right? And he's like, look at it, like, what? So then he was like, you are no God, and then he was like, at that point, he took his right hand, took the little thing off his neck, and then he said, I denounce you. So at that point, now he was like, oh, you angry to God. Now he said, your meaningless life now does have a purpose. And now he said, sacrifice yourself to me. Now that was a weird thing. Why would you say sacrifice yourself to me when you already got him in his hand? So I was like, okay, I see that this is still by choice. We're hearing it, but not seeing what we're hearing. All right. So, and somehow the sword just secretly gets into his right hand, and now he stuck them in the throat. And then here comes this gold coming out his throat as his eyes turn into gold. Now, if you notice, I'm going to put a pause right here. There's a conversation about the Norse gods and how, I'm glad you pulled that up. That right there is the symbolic connection to not even just an animal-morphic state. The yellow in the eyes was just like the lion, as so the dragon. And so when we think of Baal or Ball of thunder, this thunder, or Baal, the god of thunder, was created through like a cat or the lioness aspect, to just like the dragon is the form of what we see as a body that's came to what we call the giant, or a giant becoming now superhuman or a demigod. These are all in that same connection. Just as him, he was like, okay, now that he had this gleam in his eyes, he felt like, you know what I'm saying, he was touched, and it was saying kill all the guys. So that's what he was hearing. And then it was like their life source summon their life source to kill, right? And so he grabbed the sword, like I said, and hit him, stabbed him in the neck. So he's saying to the giant, saying to him, because when he grabbed his neck, he actually stood up, and you could see that he was a giant. And he was a lot taller than him. Now, of course, we didn't really see a complete connection. Is he an animal? What? We didn't see all of that, but I'm quite sure that was the next thing. But after he took the sword and, you know, got him in the neck, he was like, well, it seems like you got cursed. And he's like, nah, the sword seemed like it's a promise, you know. And then he was like saying, so this is why, so he said, so this is my vow. So all gods, all gods will die. You know, and that's how you get like the Black Adam concept when, you know, you got negative people in the world. There's someone that's now end up taking over and becoming the good over the bad. And so this is how you see like the sun change up, or the sun and the moon become like a different on the vortex. Just like with Thor, we have to look at what Thor is about. Thor is a fertility goddess. I mean, God. And so just that picture, can you put that picture back up there? You can see in this one, this is like the connection to this woman who actually in the comic book is real different from how the movie went. In this, she don't die at the end. She actually, I didn't mean to spoil that part. I apologize. Well, you know, some of y'all already seen it anyway. Just go back and look at it again. In this version, she actually lives on. She's a Valkyrie. So they have a different version to how the movie went. And so that was like, oh, they kind of made it like a sad movie at the end, when that she was doing with her dedication, she actually pushed herself so much that the dying made her alive. So you'll find out that guardians, like ones who rule the earth or help the earth, they're not ruling the earth, they're helping the world, you know, the world keeping its own tact of what's going on. So that's kind of like how the Loki movie is, but I'm not gonna go into that. I'm gonna just break down, you know, right for now, Thor. And so as we know about this Gore guy, he's now like a god killer. So we got Valkyrie who comes in. You put that picture back up? This picture is showing her actually going when they had to go against Zeus. But I'm glad this picture here is showing what she was supposed to have been like in the beginning, so we would know who she is. Now, Valkyrie is known as like a goddess. So you see her with the arms, just like with Jane Foster, she became muscular as well. And you find out these two in the aspect is just like saying, if we were to go sexual about it, she was really the masculine, and you're seeing the masculine now coming out of Jane. And so these two basically in their characters, as they're role playing in it, you'll start to see the chivalry between them two. And it's just like, if I got your back, you got my back. And this is how they became like a sister type thing, which, you know, that was needed and necessary in this movie, because if we were talking about Thor being a fertility god, these women supposed to be getting along, and he's supposed to be around these women. How does that work? And so that was really shown in there, yet we didn't know who Valkyrie was with. So I know it was geared towards the children movie, because that's why they didn't really go into it that much. However, they did have that part to where they had in the beginning where the galaxy, the Guardians of the Galaxy, they were kind of basically telling him, one of the people in there was telling him, yo, you know, life is, you know, you about feeling the emotions inside versus feeling pain or feeling sad, which that's what he was turning out to be. He ended up learning his Buddha side, which was the effect that he ran into her, being that he ran through all of these women he was supposedly have, and he runs into her, who basically like took his heart. And so she ended up writing like a letter, and it was ironic because they're having this fuss and feud between their Thor, the gavel, and the gavel's in between them while they're having arguments. And I'm like, what is going on? They're having a gavel fight or something? And so it was always meant for the gavel to be there, yet it was the gavel where he basically made a swear or a promise or oath on it to say protect her. So the gavel became her protection. Now, in the real world, it would be like the gavel became the body part of Thor was her protection, and was like, what am I looking at? So Avengers, when Avengers first came out and they had Thor up there, they had this gavel come up, and it was like they were using it like Excalibur, and they were saying if you can pick the gavel up, you basically are strong as Thor. So it was always this masculine thing about grabbing the gavel and being as powerful as Thor to be able to wield it. So they had all people were trying to grab it, like Iron Man. He said in a perversion, he said, "I announced prima nocta." When he grabbed the gavel and wanted to grab it up, when he said prima nocta, it had me look at it. So I went and looked, and this is a family movie and everything. It's just that we're kind of forgetting how the ratings are going, to where the ratings are now is no longer PG, is getting X-rated without saying it. And so the prima nocta was an explanation to, and he said if I basically get up there to where all the gods are and the goddesses are, I'm going to now have basically sex with the goddesses. And I was like, wow. So we're watching a movie, but they're using Latin words that, only if you know in the origin would you know what they were talking about. And so this is another way of still exploiting another aspect right in front of us while we're looking at, the main idea is because of these guys are doing a lot of sex magic in these movies. This was another one when they finally, get to the deep or the meat of it. You can see that Thor, now he don't want to have nothing to do with, intimacy, because it was a human that basically took his heart, as you can say, to where now he don't really have that feeling anymore like he used to have. So now he don't feel like he's worthy of, living the life he used to live. Yet it was the fighting and all of that that kept him, as they call it, quote unquote, this Viking aspect. So that's why this became like a quote unquote romance. So you see Rome and romance. So when you find out he been with the she-wolf type character, he been with the Scandinavian woman, and you finding more. There's another sister named Sith, Sith, which is close to Seth. Now, it was ironic that they brought her in this movie, because I wasn't paying attention to her until I started doing the research, and come to find out in the comic book, she's supposed to be having a baby by him. And there's a lot more to him having like babies and just him leaving the women. So I was like, wow, he ain't really a good guy. So I'm like, man, he over here just having sex with women and leaving them. And so he's basically like a little Zeus. And especially when they go into that, that's later on, of course, he kind of basically showing he in the movie he seemed like a good guy. Yet if you go in the comic book, you find out he basically been doing a lot of orgies, a lot of orgies, and they were into that. Then you think about Vikings, that's what they were doing. So they're putting you in one field as if they're giving you a softer porn aspect. Because if you think about Valkyrie, there go another. She was another one that was one of her. That's her right there, Seth. She was another one that was in the movie, and that's really three women in there, but we didn't see him having no intimacy with. So they kept it kind of PG, so you didn't get the idea. And only if you was a comic book character, a comic book reference type being, would you know that these are the added and taken away parts, right? So this dude, his name is like Black Death now. So he's like basically going around killing off all the good guys in the aspect. But then he wants the children. So now he takes the children. Now, the ironic thing is when it first started, where he's, doing his worshiping, his honoring or whatever, he has his daughter, she's script writing, right? And then when his partner, Rog, comes up, he's speaking, but he's also doing it like a jegna, like how we do. We storytell or legends, talk about our legends. Well, they talk about it in the story. So he's talking about Thor. And in the midst of it happening, they got like star constellations on the rock. Now, before it happened, to where the sister, little girl, was writing. She was writing some lines, and like it looked like a heart or something. There you go. And right there at the beginning, you could see there's some writings. So it's like as if it went from one lineage to the next lineage, and that's where Thor pops up. And then of course this part here where he's like telling them about now that he done sat on top of that mountain over there that's in the background. He was on that mountain like how we did Mount Sinai. And so if you think about peace, brother, if you think about Thor being Moses, so now he's on the mountain and he's doing all his homaging, and he's, you know, meditating, and he got this hippie look, and now his hair being long. And remember, they talked about him losing a lot of stuff, his love and all of these people, and then also his eye was taken out. This was the idea of what they called the Cyclops event, but they didn't really throw that in there. They just made it look like that, or what you think of Haru losing an eye. So they were using these parts from Ragnarok, the Dark World, and collaborating them. This right here, he going now into his metamorphing. So even though he wasn't all the way there, he was still trying to catch on. Now that part is really significant because he's now back to life. He feel like he's doing everything. He still don't feel right. And then here comes this other hero in the room, and he's like, "Who was that person?" And you know, that look like I'm hearing my, you know, my gavel. So now he wants to grab it, but it didn't come to him. It went to her. So now he's like, "Oh shoot, who's this being?" So now here's that cocky talk, or the, you know, the legends of what we call it in ourself as man with the ego. He wanted to be more stronger. So now he put on his, you know, attire too, and he has his wings pop up. Now his wings end up being longer than hers. And there's that other indication. When you look at capes, like Asir talked about, the cape represents the phallus. The gavel also represents the phallus. So they're doing a lot of fallacy working here in front of us. And they're like, "Oh, shoot, like now, so she the masculine." And so now you're seeing how they're doing it. And here's the Jack and Jill, right? Now, the difference between this and the first version when you saw Thor went into a vessel and bust out and hit the negative being who looks like a bird or something. When he was getting ready to get his lightning bolt and everything, and his eyes turned blue, he saw one of those look like a owl, and he's doing the Motley Crue with the fingers up and, you know, the Baphomet type style. And that was how the battle started. But he was still using Tai Chi, he was still using karate, and, you know, so they mixed it up with the Axl and the Guns N' Roses, whatever music they were using. But now at the end of that, he came through a glass temple, and these people that was there, they said, we didn't have no harm, no fighting until these people came around. So now they was expecting him to help, so he went and helped. But after the moment of him helping, they was like, "I hope he don't go through that temple." And he was like, "Oh." Then he did. He goes through the temple, and now he goes all the way to the top, and it's just like an erection. He hits the guy at the top, and now he flies off and hit him with a hammer. Then he comes out, and, you know, he drops down in front of him and say, "Yeah, we did it together as a team, blah, blah, blah." But the whole thing falls apart. With that part that you just saw with the sister and him and that firehouse burning, that was a Jack and Jill moment. That was still the Jack and Jill. You know, Jack and Jill went up the hill. Well, what if Jack and Jill wasn't Jack, and what if Jill was Jane? You know what I mean? So now they got a house burning in front of them that's falling down, versus, you know, how they have like the water coming out the top. It's a fire going down. So you're seeing a lot of technology put back in front of us, to taking us back to our, you know, beginning of time of nursery rhyme, where they're playing it, yet they're playing it in a different way, so you can still be familiarized with it, even though they basically just revise or revisit it and putting it back in your face again. So this is that moment of where now he takes the mask off. So just like how Jack and Jill, we call it the crowning. So he took off his crown, and that's another way of still showing sex without saying sex. These are the implement ways of still having intimacy in front of us, but through their own versions, without saying, "Oh, this is, oh, dang." So to play these out, he's going through the whole storyline of like, "So when did y'all meet? You know, you and the gavel." And she's like, "Well, you know, I went to this place, found it, called me. I went to the place, and, you know, leading the whole thing out I'm not going to say the whole movie. It's just that she said that, you know, it found me and that's how we connected. Then he's like, oh, okay, I got that. Then so he, you know, he at one point grabbed it to see if he can grab it. And he finally grabbed it. So he's like, oh, man, whew. Because he had Stormbreaker for a minute and the Stormbreaker was even getting jealous. And I'm talking about a tool. So if this tool is getting jealous, is this a phallus or what? So it's getting your mind into what's going on here. And when Valkyrie pops up, can you put her back in there? When Valkyrie pops up, it's a whole different aspect. She actually is look like a mayor or a king or a president. She start doing things. Now, if you notice how she starts off, she wearing a blue suit, right? And then notice how her hands are shaking people. Because she grabs a hand and she do a Masonic handshake. I said, oh, wow, she did a Masonic handshake up in here too. So when he came around to her, it got to a point where you could see how they were still from the past being present, old friends. So you don't really know if they had any intimacy or not or whatever. Because how are you walking around this, you know, if they were to call it like that, this gorgeous hunk man or whatever with muscles and everything, you ain't do nothing with him, yet is all this type of, you know, feelings that be going on in this movie. So they're kind of like playing with this cat and mouse thing about him being with his woman. And so when they finally get that connection again, there's another intimacy that you get to see, but that's when they finally run into Zeus. Now, of course, this here, when he comes out, check that out, go back again. His outfit is a little different. It looks more feminine. I'm glad you brought that picture up right there too. We definitely got to go back on that. Notice that looks like a actual animal. And because we don't talk about it in this movie the whole entire time, he's going through a lot of big animal concepts. This right here, his outfit, look at it, is really feminine. And it looks like he's wearing a dress, to be honest. So when he came out, I was like, yo, he over here really on the feminine side. But here it is coming out like Black Adam. Black Adam had a headgear too. Now this one, oh, even Thor did it too. But in this one, he did it in the purple. He had a purple hoodie on. This one right here, he got the white one on, right? And he's in the shadows. So this is a whole different other world going on, black and white. So I'm like, yo, this movie is going in deep. You got to really see it from not just color, black and white. So black and white represents 8 and 9. See, 7 is the colors. 8 and 9 is the black and the white. The difference between the colors, your black and your white, the top and the bottom. So your 8 and 9 could be like basically what white does, but then black going back to death. So when we say black going back to death, death is really life. Death is like you going to mut, M-U-T. So when we're seeing these versions of how they even started off with the woman or with the we don't know what sex these aliens are that Thor and the Guardian Galaxy of the Guardians really helping out, because they don't really show their gender. They just basically see from the neck up. So you seeing the king that they got when they threw the veil on him, he has a crown on him, and the crown is it basically looks like a disc or a sun disc or a moon, so you're seeing all this on his headpiece or headgear. When he gets into the ship with the two oxen or two goats that he got, when he brought the two goats in, they're screaming, that's the siren. So those two are mainly needed for his chariot, which they kind of finagled around it. They put it back in there. That was good. I see how they would want to still get it in there, because you talking about Thor who rode on a horse with wings. So they had to end up still putting that, but they gave it to the sister instead, which was cool. They still keeping their versions, just kind of mixing it around, which was nothing wrong with that. We just got to see where they're at and what they're doing with it. If you look at how they came in, this is now the raccoon. The raccoon gave him the eye. That's how he got his other eye back. And when they brought the two animals in, it was a conversation about meat, and then they finally stopped, making their noises, and then he said meeting. This is how we know that we use phonetics and we use the terminologies differently, and that's how even the animals, when they picked up on it, they were of that same level. And this is also the experience that we're finding out that the women, right, in that moment, it was the woman that was, like more of a robotic type woman. She grabbed the gun, and then she got the Asian sister, and the Asian sister grabbed the gun. They were going to basically put down the animals. Yet this is the same thing as how we look at our gods and when we use God conscious, we're talking about insects, animals, all of them are part of our totems. So for them to do that, like just immediately, they were like the masculine, and then the men had to be the feminine, and then it was like, oh wait, and stop the bullet or the shot from happening, and end up hitting the Rock character, and then it's like he got up and now he's making sounds, but now he's like the comic relief of the conversation. That's what they do with this. But if it was real life, she would have really shot somebody. And it was the idea of, are we in fear of our animals? And couldn't we have come up with some other better solution than just putting them down by shooting them? There's a lot of mixed messages when you look at movies like this, to where it could be like a cartoon animated, but it's not animated, nor is it cartoon. They put computer graphics in it to have you think, on that level. Yet you still got to put yourself at, this could still be harmful for the average child that's not really thinking about these things, that's just being thrown at them fast. I mean, because it's fast. You got to be as quick as what they're throwing it at you, because they're showing you shapes from when they go into the ship to even when Thor finally, reaches wherever his destination is. There's mad shapes all on the floor, mad shapes on the wall, shapes on the outfit. Okay, now right here, go back right quick. This killing that he's doing that we don't know nothing about is a Norse god kill, because they did this in Tanzania. If you look up right now, mudslide fossils, right? They're showing you animals looking as the earth. So Tanzania, there's an actual dragon shape. The beginning of Tanzania has a dragon shape going around that whole part of the beginning of the continent. So we wouldn't know that there's this story that's constantly being thrown out at us about Thor. And if you look up Thor, Valiant Thor, that Valiant Thor is an alien. This Thor, he's a Norse god. So there's kind of like these mixed messages telling us, is it really that it's an alien, or we on a planet of animals that we've been alienated by and not know, like giants? So we're getting into the megaliths, we're getting into the big Stonehenge mountains, the actual blood that end up draining into the water and creating trees and forests. We might not be aware of this, but that was that one of the 9 worlds that they were talking about, that he knew how to travel once he had basically those two goats. And so when you think about the goats, that still represents Capricorn, the season of Capricorn or Pan. And if you think about the horns represent Thor. Yet Thor also represent Taurus. And then here you got him as Leo as the zodiac. Yet Leo represents Heru. So Heru is connected to Horus, as Horus connected to horse. And then of course a horse can still be a connection to a bird flying, because they put the wings on it as Pegasus. So we get all these things that basically still give us an analogy of a dragon, like Loki. Why is Loki green? And so this right here, remember also, if you look up Loki's storyline, they talk about him being impregnated, having a horse with 18 legs. So I'm like, whoa, they getting deep with. This get a little confusing afterwards. Like, I want to go down this rabbit hole to figure this out. But you get into this story about the Love and Thunder. Love and Thunder basically wanted to unite his ways of helping out to end the killer who's basically killing everybody. Now, how can you stop him? Well, his thought was, let's go find Zeus. Let's get the highest, beings. And what he said was, it was ironic because he said Ra. He brought up, they were saying, who should we get to, fight him? He was like, let's get Ra, let's get Zeus, You know, let's get all the highest gods out there. So I'm like, oh, he threw out Ra there? Man, this is deep. So you'll find out that when he goes to this place, right? That's the story about him. Yeah, exactly. When he goes to this place, you find out that in that palace where the sister was at, they were wearing all gowns. They was talking about their elemental gods. So they had to wear colors, different variants. Might as well call it variant. Different variations of colors. And so the ironic thing is Thor had on blue, but then he had a little bit of purple. So this is all connected to his hood. He put the hoodie on. So now he's up in there, you know, all hood out with his peoples. And there's 4 of them. So it was like, oh man, I'm looking at, you know, fear. Again, I be talking about fear all the time. Fire, earth, air, and rain. And so they in there, and you know, Thor is up there like he's in the arena, the Olympus. So this is another Rome thing. And Zeus comes out and he basically throws his thunderbolt all around and some ego thing again. And you could see there's a Mayan right under them. He's wearing all green. He got his own type of, you know, Olmec connection or Aztec connection. I was like, yo, this is deep. Yeah, see, they'll play around with this and you'll never know what the story about when it comes down to him, Loki being who he is. Is he dealing with bestiality? We'll have to find that later on his little scenario. So, but yet with Thor, he over here end up in the middle of the arena because of, you know, him having a wordplay. It was kind of comical and everything. But when he end up in the middle, he started telling him about, you know, this demon god or whatnot. I mean, the death, Black Death, killing people. And so he's like, you know, we need your help. And he's like, nah, we ready to have an orgy. And he said, you say one more word, you don't be invited. So you could tell that this again is over our children's head, that we're supposed to be knowing what they're talking about. And then he's like, you know what? Let's find out who you are. And he strips them. And there's that what we look at from the ideas of our actors. They end up having to show a booty scene, you know, show the hip. You got to show the hip, you know. And then there's this point where the cornucopia is being put in front of us, but now it's Valkyrie that's eating fruit out of it or eating popcorn, whatever it could be, the indication is. Yet, you know, she's like passing on to her friend, and now they all like, and this scene right here, all the women just basically passed out, right? And then there's this one dude that's right in the corner on the left. I guess he's supposed to be like the bishop or priest. He passes out along with the women. So I'm like, wow, this is another indication to how they're giving us this sex magic without calling it that. You know what I'm saying? And then of course they're giving the little jokes. See the one on the left? He passing out along with the women. And now the 2 guards, they don't pass out at all. So we're actually seeing that us as men, we'll look at them as who we are, but then men seeing your own part is like, what is that they're giving us? These are the technologies that we got to be more in tune with. Now you see how she's now leaning more. She already been with this woman, but yet she's leaning more. Now she's starting to eat. So when we think about chakras, the root chakra and the sacral chakra, she's wearing the orange and she had a little bit of darker orange, which is that red and the yellow. So she got 3 chakras, while she's the 4th chakra wearing the green and the yellow going into the green to the blue. So that's how you see chakras being put in front of us. And why is she eating during that time? This is why we think of sex magic. They usually try to put these 2 together so that we won't go no higher than that when it comes down to our intellect. Yet think past that. You see the red as the chair that she's sitting in. Green is the chair she's sitting in. So they strategically put them in these chairs for that purpose, right? Then, of course, they said, well, let's see what they wearing behind it, who's behind their clothing. They was like, nah. So they just took off there and said, nah, don't take mine off. I'll show you who I am. So it was like, there's the comical right back. Let's go on back into the regular, you know, what we're doing. And so it gives you that analogy that if she said in 60 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and fight this dude because I already know what he's about. And if you think about it, in the back in the day, these being gods of who they are, that was like a lot of pimping going on. So she's like, I'm only giving them 60 seconds. We're going to just rampage, get You take the right, I take the left, and you go for the thunderbolt, that kind of thing. So Valkyrie is the masculine in this movie. And what's so deep about it, before they even went there and took this journey, Jane Foster, she was like, you being king and all, I mean, why would you want to, switch up and now go back into fighting in the field? You got basically what you want. And she was like, well, it's cool being king, but, I like being in the field more. So you could see that the aspect of king is being put in this conversation in the movie. So not queen, king. So now you're seeing it also how we call it frequency, the king, the queen, the queen, all that's being a part of this reference. And now you're seeing it also being replayed again as a Viking. So we hear the word Viking. That's why the Valkyrie was put there as one of those, women gods. But this still goes back to our Amazon women. That's where that real reality came from. So it's not to be getting short played by this, but yet they are creating a short play in the conversation so that we'll be, not knowing who we are and how to be intact to that. Now, the real reason why the sister Jane Fonda became Jane Foster, there was a sword created through her having cancer, fourth cancer. So the fourth cancer, also while she was going through her connection, it was her being an author. She wrote a book, and that's how she started out. And it was really her sample was being put on a sample list, which was 22 as the actual number. So that's still 4. There's a lot of the numbers you get, if you start looking at the numbers, what they're looking at, they talking numbers, they're giving you a lot of code. That's that idea of what we call fear. Thor, Thor, that's 4 letters, and when he first started and he, did what he did, and it was like some kind of military conversation that he ended up saying at the end, because he was talking about, the holidays. They thought it was a good holiday to be there in the place that they were at. And he's like, this is not a holiday. We can get killed over here and this, that. Then after all that was fighting, he puts his, his hammer up, because when he felt like he did a good mission, from his own awakening, it was mainly like he being cocky. He said, hoorah. Now we know hoorah is a military aspect. So now it was like saying a Usafit over this area that was crystals and things like that. And he come over there and destroy it as if he helped him out. So I'm like, wow, this guy, he ain't really all that good. He's cocky, he, arrogant. And then, like I said, when he ran into her, now he's getting tested of his arrogance. So now he got to figure out how he still got to finesse, this conversation with someone who he didn't know till he finally got the mask off her face. And then he's like, oh, okay. And then he was still having, a mix up with how did she get my hammer? You know what I'm saying? And then he finally had that where he's like, okay, now I'm kind of okay with her having my hammer, because now I know who she is. I know how the hammer got there because I said it myself. And so this is why he had to go get it like an extra weapon, because he found out when he ran into the Black Death, he had a Necro God sword. And when he grabbed it, at his first time running to Valkyrie, he was helping Valkyrie out. Then he runs into her. Then he finally runs into, the Black Death character. And the Black Death used shadows to grab him and was holding him. He was like, oh, I seen that sword before. They called that the Necro God. And you said, oh, it might be the legends are true about it. Then he started to stick him in his neck. And he was like, oh, that really hurt. And then his eyes turned. Now, this is the same thing as Black Adam. When we know that the eyes turn, this is giving you another indication of this is your psychic defense mechanism. A lot of us aren't aware of it, but when he was sticking him in his neck, so this is not the same as that God that was sitting there eating all the food and waiting on somebody else with the sex magic, because that's how it was starting to show the giant, the first giant he messed with. This one had more compassion because he's in blue. He went past the green, so it had to be in blue. His eyes turned blue, right? And he just basically went berserk and had to knock the guy off of him. He's like, yo, then he wanted again, trying to attach his windbreaker, thunder breaker. And in the midst of it, he said, how many times I gotta tell you, stop touching my things? And then his eyes turned blue again, and he started, fighting them off again. So he was like, he can hardly keep him off of him, yet he had enough strength to take and wield that. Because at one point, he hurt Valkyrie, and they were dipping, and so at the moment of them dipping, he grabbed the Thunderbreaker and now snatched it from him. So he was like, "Dang, I got to come up with some, some other stuff other than what I'm doing." Now, of course, I skipped around to have you go watch the movies. What order did that come in? I ain't giving you no order. I'm having you to figure all out how it's all coming to you. The Thunderbolt, major thing, and it was again another phallus conversation. And he wanted to use the Thunderbolt. And needless to say, here's another god, and Zeus saying, really, I am a little afraid, because we finally started talking to him after he did the undressing thing, and said, I am kind of afraid, just for GP, but he ain't coming up here. I got everything on lock. Like, he don't even know where this place is at, type thing. We're gonna have orgies, we're gonna have drinking, do all we want. And I'm like, this is some old gluttony joint. So even Thor was like, nah, man, I ain't for that. I'm over here trying to, I gotta save humanity. So he's like, man, I ain't down with that. So it was like, then the sisters was like, all right, this time is up. So they finally come down, and now they basically are helping and aid. And he gets Zeus gets up there, he throws a little thunderbolt at him, and then he grabs it, and he's like, what? He throws it right back. And of course, this again, his eyes turn blue. So you catch a lot of that when his eyes turn blue, a self-defense mechanism. All right, so he throws it at him, he hits him, he basically gets rid of him, and now the lightning bolt is still there. So Valkyrie, she wants to go get it. So now she became the masculine all of a sudden, goes up there, grabs the lightning bolt, and then does this chivalry thing, grabs the woman's hand, does the kiss on the hand. I'm like, what is that? That's so masculine. So anyway, she drunk. So I was like, yo, they just putting this finesse in here. And if we not paying attention to it, it's just running by. It's like over the head, And I realized then that there's these other parts too that, as far as my sisters, my brothers, and how we look upon each other, it's good to have that feeling of royalty around, and have that, because I do it myself. I put my hand, I take the woman's hand and I give my hand to her. She put her hand in my hand, and I do it as this way it is, and then I put my head and I put it right towards my, the back of my top of my forehead. Usually you'll find out that people more than likely will kiss their hand, yet that become more of a, I don't know where your mouth been at and stuff like that. So we end up perverting that. So to give it, another order was to put it towards the head. And I saw that in there. So that was, significant of what we call chivalry. And if us men, y'all looking, because y'all might be slipping. I'm telling you, she gonna go right by you. So you're like, I don't know what you did wrong, but I don't know what you ain't doing right. And that's that left and the right thing. Pay attention to that, because we were supposed to be in that, and this is Vikings, so this is not, they've been rough and tough the whole entire time. They actually showing they got some, some soft side to each other, and I was liking that to seeing if we're gonna catch things like that. That's what I liked about it. I ain't gonna say that was cool for her to do that. I'm saying it was cool for us to be able to catch these type of significance, that because women, if y'all ever notice, y'all here as well, seeing each other go through rough and tough things. And if those women were up there, they basically was being seduced, all that kind of stuff for the guy. And what did they have any say so? You ain't hear them say nothing throughout the whole movie, except for out of the sound. But other than that, they couldn't say too much. So for that being that I recognize you, that was there. Like, we were looking for our underdogs and how much they're under the structure of what's going on. And no matter what, they're still there, got to go through it. So if we're not beating up the people that's in the middle, that's a great thing, because now it's showing how we're not taking out everybody in the room. It's getting down to who's the one in the detail of this is where the pain need to go to, the one that's giving out the hurt. So that was a good thing as well. And no one else had to go out in a way to where the whole place got to be destroyed and stuff like that. They still got their thunderbolt, and they still did what they needed to do. And it wasn't like they wanted to be coming in there being a bad guy. It's just that it led up to how some of us, when we're in this higher realm, we think we so high that ain't no coming down. Ain't no going down there and helping other people out because we where we at, you know? And that was like another version of how we were thinking of Black Panther, because a lot of people didn't like Black Panther in the beginning. They was like, yo, he over here like saying it's like just for Africa and nobody else get to go over there. You know what I'm saying? So it was like putting a stigma on how, you know, if we're really being heroes, that's like having a gun. You know, are you holding a gun to only protect yourself and your family? When if you got a gun, you should be protecting everybody for 24 hours. I mean, what's the purpose of having a gun? You know what I'm saying? Because if the gun get taken away from you, then what? We're going to wait on you to, you know what I mean, do something else after that. Respect. Give thanks. And so this is why I felt like this was needed to talk about Viking. The actual Viking aspect is 6 kings. It represents 6. So we think about 6 as the word sex. Sex, section, septo. All these are connected to your 7 as well. So when we think about the 7, Thor had basically the snake. You know, Aaron had turned the actual staff into a snake, 2 snakes. Now, the thing about this is we're using the blade, the thunder. I can't even call it out. The anyway, his axe was a different indication from the sword, which you saw in the comic book. Yet it was like another illustration of kind of being like the it was called Thunderbreaker. He had that one for a version of the root being the ground because it had the tree part to it, and it was wrapped. It was through the Guardian character. He ended up using a part of his body part to wrap that sword, that axe. So, and on top of that, it was made by a big giant dwarf. So you're getting more conversations from the legendary items that they use and how it was merged together to do another task within this movie. Now, of course, they used that the evil one used that to find his way back up onto the Asgard. So that's why the 9 realms is important. That's why the 9 Enods also is connected to Africa. And then this is why we call Menissus or Minotaur, like we say for the bull, the miniature, and the bull, the Minotaur. So this 9 was 9 Minusus, Minnosos, Minusus, or you'll find out how to write it. But it's this aspect of what they put Moses. There's not one Moses, there's 9 different Moses. Yet these 9 Moses is really 9 women. So this is the 9-month birth that it was like, okay, I was confused for a second, but yet this is the same thing as using it as 9 angels. So I was like, oh, that's why this makes sense, because he had wings on his head, and the wings on the head, just like how Flash have wings on his head, this is another connection to that Gemini effect. Now, the reason why I brought up Gemini is because they had Jane as a Gemini being a Virgo. So you're getting her as her history behind her is that she had Cancer, right? Cancer is 4. Gemini is 3. So these number plays are being rolled into it as like a chronological and a way to get, you know, you more into why you're watching this in the first place, because it's on about time. It's all about time. So they're giving you Chronos without saying Chronos. Chronos is the ruler of Cancer. So when you hear Chronos or COVID or Cancer, that's all connected to your Chronos, and that is, of course, a Norse god. So that's why all that was put in there, and yet that's who Thor was supposed to be fighting against, and there was a typhoon that he was supposed to be fighting against. That's why the dragon wasn't even put in this movie, because they done did it so much, they don't know how to keep it going without, you know, getting collaborated in their own lives of how they got to keep flipping it, keep flipping it, keep flipping it. And I said, that don't make any sense. Well, we got to revise it where it's making sense right now. You know what I'm saying? So the Remulus and Rummus, that's why the she-wolf, the wolf, is the illustration of why he was with the she-wolf right in the beginning. So they're giving you Rome without telling you that, you know. And how is it that Loki and, you know, Thor are twins? That's coming off of Rome's and Remulus. This whole thing is like a play of something that was reenacted already, and we're just seeing it being regurgitated to us, and we like it, but we don't know why we like it. So it's about the 9 months birth. It's about the 9 angels. Going into that, you'll see it from the cherubim, the Sephirim, the what they say, the principles, the archangel, the angel. Yes,
You
and
got
so
the seraphim thrones, principles, power.
yeah, those are the connections. You're missing the whole idea of how Thor get this energy, right? And how did it Thor? Because it's lightning, right? He's using the lightning, the thunderbolt. This thunderbolt was the illustration through Odin and Zeus, but it's okay. They like to remix it, do whatever they want to do to make it what it is. Love, love is actually the reconnection of what you see, because the word is evolve and evil. So love is backwards, yet created to look forward. Love, the LOVE. So you got the original V in it with energy of love, yet it's through eternity. So it was amazing that they had eternity as like the decision maker or the desire for whatever your highest purposes were, because that's where he wanted to go. He wanted to get not just to Asgard, he wanted to actually go to find eternity. And once he did, this is where they was like, okay, we got to stop him no matter what. Yes, respect.
Respect. Seba Ramatev Queb has joined us this evening. He would like to join in the discussion with you.
Ashe.
And you actually both last were together on the promo for the 2023 tour.
Oh, okay.
The other day. So he's here. Ramatev, are you available to introduce yourself to everyone and speak your greetings?
Peace, peace, peace.
Peace.
On the top of my Uncle Uncle Johnson, Uben, Nefi Cap on the Boo, Haru, my to everyone. Anuk Ramatef Queb, I'm Ramatef Queb. I'm a practitioner of divinations. You can find me on Facebook as Ramatef Queb. You can find me on Instagram as Ramatef_Queb. You can also find me at our website, maatraya.org, the DNA. And then just to chime in with the brother, when we're dealing with those going back to the 9 angels and then getting back to eternity. So you got those 9 angels is dealing with the cherubim, seraphim thrones, virtue, power, and virtue, principle, powers, archangels, angels, and I forgot what the last one is. But then when it comes into eternity, right, that was the part that like really got me going, because it's like you're seeking eternity, and they tell you in order to seek eternity, you got to go within the whole entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's where eternity lies. And when they, projected him, it was I thought that was pretty beautiful. It was like watching if anybody's familiar, Kingdom Hearts 3. It was like basically reenacting that whole video game, to be honest, because that's basically what happened in the game. It's like when Sora got to this particular part where he was basically about to die, whatever, and he got zapped into this zone that was literally parallel to where eternity lies. Literally from the sky to the ocean. And when I seen that, I said, yo, they're reenacting Kingdom Hearts 3. Okay, so then I go back into Kingdom Hearts 3, and it goes back into the whole franchise of that itself. How you have that same concept, which you were just speaking on about the Romans, the twins, things of that nature. In this particular case in that game, it's Sora and Riku. Those are the twins. Going and going and going. I'm gonna let you continue on what you were saying, but I just wanted to put that in there because I thought that was just interesting how you just put all that together.
Yeah. No, it gives you a lot of research play to work with when you see that. Of course, this is again, like if you think Black Adam, 1940s, and now you got what we got now of Thor, and it was in the 1900s, yet it's still kind of basically wanted to shift into the 1970s so that it can now play 2000 with the 1970s era, because you got the 60s of when they were actually growing the hair, but they went into the 70s where there was peace and love, man. And now we got Love and Thunder. So it's like, what's Love and Thunder? So it's like, okay, I gotta figure this out. So they talking about the lightning bolt, right? And again, we were talking about the horses, right? You got the green horse, you got the white horse, you got the red horse, you got the black horse, and that green horse really represents the pale horse. So why did he look pale in the beginning? So it's like, dang, we're going over here with all type of analogies of like, here's death in front of you. Yes, peace, peace, peace. Death in front of you, yet death is life. And so what were they doing? The woman, she's about to pass away through all that fighting here and there. That was, the fight scene, that was all great. I got to speed through now. So, but it was to that level to where now is an exchange happening. This woman, she about to pass away. He wanted to get his daughter. And he's like, please, don't be selfish kind of thing. Think about what you're doing. And then, he's like saying, well, if I got to die, I'm going to be with the woman I'm with. I'm going to take my time with her. So it showed you as time, like on the constellation, I'm going to sit here and kneel with her and get my energy with her, while he's like, he got his right hand up. So you still see it again, Masonic movement, right and the left. Here it is too in that picture you just showed, where they're showing how, okay, I got her in my arms. She passed away. I'm gonna just go ahead and let her, do her thing. And then when that happened, he's looking at like, now I got my daughter. So now it was a reverse happening, as you see in somebody's death, somebody's life. And now he's about to go, and he's like, last request, can you like save my woman, my daughter, hold my daughter down. And even though, because what he was saying to him, it kicked in finally. It took all the way to the end. You know what I'm saying? Like, people, when you think about people who are evil, right? And you never said nothing to them, like to change their idea, then they'll probably have an ongoing anger. You know what I mean? And because the God that he saw in front of him as the giant, because that's what we know it as, the Nephilim, he stuck him because he didn't have no love. He had no love. He had no remorse. And he was like, dang, I called you a God. I gave you all this clout, and now you do this in front of me. So it was like the disappointment. So when Thor was like, this is what I'm fighting for. And he's like, dang, that brother got heart. Because he already was like testing him the whole time. He tried to stick him in the neck. He tried to take a sword from him. He did so many things with him. I mean, he couldn't get to a point of killing him because he even fought him a little bit. And he threw back the same hits he was throwing out. So he's like, dang, this brother, even though his purpose wasn't really to kill him, he wanted his daughter. So when he finally saw the love between one of another, like how he had love for, I want my daughter back. And now he sees, he wants his woman back kind of thing. You know what I mean? And that was in his mind to say, okay, I ain't going to keep messing with them. I got to go focus on my daughter. So it got to him a point where I'm going to just get my daughter. And he finally got the daughter. But now he passing away. So now he knows that his purpose is that she's not going to be alone, as the woman saying it to him. Your daughter's not going to be alone. So it was like, wow, you hit my heart when you said that. So now he's thinking, well, dang, it might be possible. So now he's talking to Thor and was like, Hope, can you watch over my daughter? He's like, yeah, I ain't got no problem with that. So you see that this is a village life in the movie. Now, the other thing I like about it before I had went there was the fact that when he had the thunder in his hand and the children was in the room, because he didn't already did a connection with the sun. Now, that was the other part too. The sun, his eyes turned yellow because of his father. I forgot his name is Nephilim, something with an N. And he was the actual Midgard or the Asgard guardian that can help you get in the world or get out the world, which reminded me of Van Poo.
Heimdall.
Say it again.
You talking about Heimdall?
Yes.
One of the three ruins. But keep going.
Yeah, he decided to change his father's given name from him to Axel, which we know Axel as a wheel, but also is like what the wheel does, give power. So it was kind of different to hear him say, "This is my name," and he's like, "Nah, this is your name. This is what your dad calls you." And I don't think he wanted to call you that. And then the Rock character said, "Nah, you might as well respect him as that." Now this is the same thing I did with myself, like giving myself another nomenclature to call myself. So I saw that being significant, respect the little brother for that part that he had in there. And then on top of that, he was really the communicator between him and the children to Thor. So when it came down to Thor actually having a conversation, he was having them visualize Thor, and Thor had to visualize him, and then he was a projection in front of them. Now, this is the same thing we do with, like telekinesis, telepathic, which I was loving that part. That was significant in the movie, and showing that was one of his powers that he had basically known of having, which was great, because when it came down to it and they had to actually do the fighting, because he was talking about, the bad guy, and he was saying, the bad guy is this, the bad guy is that, and he popped up and said, "Oh, you want to talk about me?" And then he was like, "So you scared? You were talking about cutting off heads?" And he shows the head, and he cut the head off, and he rolled it off in front of the children. Now they all freaked out. But this is again the example of that out there in Africa, where the dragon, I was saying, the head was cut, and it was supposed to be bleeded out into the river. But this is another indication it did with the children, cut the head off and let it roll off in front of them, in front of the children. I was like, dang, they kind of put things in there. How you thinking? Was that what they were talking about? And he was saying you were so admirable about the head being cut off. And this has always been, cut the head off to make the whole body bleed out. So they always wanted to see like a god die with the head cut off. Like they felt like there's no way to really kill a guy unless you cut the head off. And then of course with the Rock character, when they threw the lightning bolt in him, his head was the only thing, his face was the only thing that kept him alive. So he was like, yo, if he had hit me in the face or something, I probably would have been gone. But you could see that our head is one part of the body, as in body, as we know it as the Olmec. When you think about the Olmec head is one of those megalith aspects or characters that we find out that you might just only have to have the head to become still who you are in, the other people's lifelines. So it was another thing, like how the sister said, "You got my 6." She tied it up, put him on the back of her head, and so it was like 6 and 12. Like you actually seeing time being used as a whole zodiacus wheel versus separated. So I was like, wow, night and day. They really putting this together. And then it looked like a mustache over his face. So it was like, wow, is they doing that too? So this is a part of where you had a goatee become the shepherd versus the lamb. But everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to follow. And he's right next to her right there. So it was like, is this Mary? Is this the Virgo? It was a lot that was going on that had you say, I got to look at the zodiac. Who's who in this movie? Because once you start to do that, you see it unfold. And what I was getting to about Thor is, when he finally got that lightning bolt, right? And he's in a room with the children. He said, yeah, y'all don't need to be have no fear and stuff like that. And he's like, but we can't fight. We just children. So he's like, y'all more than that. So he's like, you're God's children, or you're the people's children. So I'm paraphrasing, of course. But when he grabbed that lightning bolt and said, I'm going to grant Thor's energy through y'all, he, like, as you could see it from a tree in a bird's eye view, it just like the vines or the veins that we have going through our fingers all the way to the tip of the fingertips. It was like a tree, main tree, the root spread all the way through the children and hit every one of them. And now all of them got that energy, you know what I'm saying? And now all of them felt good. They all got so now they all like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And so they had all grabbed like a weapon in the beginning. He said, go grab something to be your weapon. And then when he charged them, it was like a teddy bear was a weapon. Everything became like mental art. When you know mental art, everything basically in front of you can be used as a weapon. So I was loving that part, that they kept that village life in the movie while they went through all this other stuff. And then, of course, like I said, at the end, when they finally had this exchange of the energy, of course, for the daughter, not being a mean person, but actually being a good person. And so now he's basically just showing her how to become one with manners versus one without. Yeah, and the Mount Olympus, that was deep. When they went with that, they actually showed you the connection of Olympia and how us as people too, because we're into fans and being fan club type. And so Thor was like a fan at first, and then he realized once he was in the arena, this is not about being a fan no more. So our reality behind that, are we really the type of person to say, oh, I love this man for doing this and doing that, and then you don't realize you probably don't know him. You don't know anything about him.
Goes back to the saying where he even said it in the movie. He was like, you never want to meet your idol. That's exactly what he said.
Because
You
this
never
is
want
showing you the
to
realm. Yeah, there's a separate realm between, like, let's say us, as we know it as Ra, we could say Asar from Haru. They're going to be separate. Just like this one right here, the Pisces connection of birth is that constellational change. And when you think about it, when he got chained up, it was like that was the sacrifice moment. You know what I mean? And so as it went further, she said, "You got humiliated," and he was like, "Nah, I ain't get humiliated." So now in his mind, he didn't think he got humiliated. But this again is how we look at how we might have been sacrificed in front of someone right in the beginning, and we didn't see that happening. So now it is about how do you put courage back onto yourself, because remind yourself that this words have a powerful meaning. So when we say the word close, is it that we're closed or clothed? You know what I mean? So when he took the cover off of him, it was like now he's open. Yet even in this word open, they made it look like he's exposed. And so his heart, it wasn't like he was in shame. He didn't say, oh shoot, oh man. Nah, he was still who he was when the clothes came off. So that is another thing behind the scenes in our mind. Do we really look at a person through their soul, spirit, or we just look at what they're wearing and how they, oh man, I got fashion about how they look, and that
again.
was significant. Go ahead.
I was agreeing.
Oh yeah. And if you find out the same thing with the image that we had for this man being evil, he wasn't as evil as he was. It was the letdown that was making him feel like he had to go in his shadows. Just how you think if you went to Black Adam, it was the same concept. Adam, his dad was mad, and so he blew up, and that was a Black Adam effect. So for him, he was like, well, shoot, I'm gonna take the shadows of these people and let them be in their own fears. He was actually grabbing people up, right? He grabbed Valkyrie. He looked at her. He said, "Oh, I know what's up with you." He looked at he looked at Jane Fonda. He said, "Jane Foster, I know what's up with you too. You about to die soon." So he was able to read their fears because they're wearing it. We wear our fears all the time. This was a great moment here too, because this is where he was finally like saying, "Okay, I'm at a point of letting go." To now, all I'm doing now is waiting for somebody to say, we need you in battle, and I'll be ready. And this with us as people, we do it like that. We end up being a soldier to a mission, but don't know what the mission is about. So that's why it's important to say, all right, let me step back a little bit. And as you see, even though he was doing the fighting and doing what he had to do, okay, Taurus. Okay, that makes sense. As in the fighting, you find out that he wasn't like, I gotta destroy everything. It could be that it got destroyed, but it was out of his clumsiness. So that's how you see that it was comical, because it didn't really have the complete connection of what we look at it as a mental art, or the Tai Chi, or the Capoeira, or whatever mental art ability that most people have. This shows us that there's levels to it. Like if he did knock stuff over, there was no apology. Now the reason why, he's the Viking, so you got to look at it from his aspect. He's like one of the barbarian people, so his barbarous style was there. Yet we had to look past that too, because that's not us as well. The Barbary state, or the Barbary island, that's where all of this comes from. And if you look at the Tartars, look up Tartarians. That'll help you as well. Look up Nephilim. This is why a lot of this was put around these Norse character, the Norse folklore aspect, because they're wanting to show something, yet they can't show it too much, because then it'll be giving you the truth. And once you know the truth, You know what I mean? You're gonna not want to stop. You're gonna want to keep on going. So that's another reason why this movie, like, to me, had a great point of references when you look at how he was in Zeus's Olympus area. Look at the floor. That same floor is used in Loki. So that's why I was saying these movies are going to be great once you see how you could piece them together and put them, side by side and say, oh, dang, that's why this matched with that. And now you're starting to see why did they have it like, the comic books. That at first they were called comic strips, right? And they were also connected to the newspaper. Now, newspaper isn't all that interesting. So as like Asir Dukatir brought it to our attention, he was like, you can imagine that someone had to write about the Pope, right? And they didn't want to write him in a bad character, yet they wanted all the people to grasp this character so that, they could be more familiar with him. So they became characters as a cartoon and made strips and made it comic strips. So these comic strips were every Sunday, to then it was every day, to then it was like, look, let's just make comic books. And so the comic books are not the same as what we could look at in our world. However, it had some comedic aspects to it. So if you go into, like I said, Black Adam, you find out that they use Dr. Fate with the Ankh. The Ankh is in on Dr. Fate's suit. And that's the same as in your ancestral background, because that's the tuning fork, that's the speaker, or that's the way that we open our mouth through the Ankh. And then the Ankh, being that what it looks like like a spoon with just missing the left and the right handle. Or you could see it as the anchor. The anchor is one of those symbolic pictures I drew that had me go into Eternal. So that's how I said, oh man, this stuff is unfolding as we're unfolding ourselves. So if you notice that if you're looking at movies and you're saying, dang, is this about me? Yes, it is about you. Now, see how it's not only about you, it's a mental, a physical, and a spiritual to the riddles. You have a spiritual, you have a individual riddle, you have a family riddle, and you have what we call the worldly riddle, basically a community riddle. And that's how you're able to unbridge these, and like what we're doing right now. Yes, sis.
Speaking on thinking movies are about you, Ramatev Queb, would you mind sharing your thoughts on that question, comment?
Personally, I was going to go back to the part where he's talking about in the beginning of the movie, like when he was talking about the mental arts, right?
Yeah.
And then you see how Thor was displaying certain type of what's that word? Nostalgic scenes, right?
Yeah.
And then when you really look at it, you look at that temple that he went through. It's like giving you a warning of like when they talk about raising your kundalini, and the way that he went into the temple was like he was the serpent going all the way up that whole building and just just tore that whole thing up. And then it just shows you how, if you use this type of energy, it's going to destroy your whole entire being.
And that's great, because what that scene showed, I was saying that as well, when the brother was sitting at the top and he hit the brother off. So it was like an explosion. So you're actually seeing, because you do tarot reading, right? That would be like the tower. And they would say that's the burning tower. That would be where the tower at the top is burning and the roof is, blown off from the top. So that was another form of ejaculation without calling it that. Because, he's using a hammer. He's coming straight out of it. He's knocking the dude off. And then, now he's coming out of it and he's saying what he got to say. So it's like as if he was reborn again. So this is that other thing. The significant thing about that, would it look in crystal form and that it had like no strong structure. It was more like organically made, so that it was really fragile. You know what I mean? So all he had to do was touch it, seemed like, and it would have just, fell apart. So it showed that as well. And then, like I said, the other scene was when he was in front of Jane, and now this house is burning down. So it's like showing you, like how he said earlier, if you're doing ejaculation this whole time, you're bound as an older man, because that's what was leading up to our older men we're suffering if we're getting older and older and just ejaculate. You have to do some insemination. The whole reason why the fire was burning in front of them, it was like as if that's their love that was melted or burnt down due to the fact that the relationship. Now think about it. These are two superheroes, or one of them a hero and the other one learning about the hero. And they were separate because their life got so busy that they just didn't have no more time for each other. So these are the things that we find out in our relationships for real, for real. So now they put it in the movie, yet they're telling, like I said earlier, is this about me? Yes, it's about you. So
Yeah.
if you got the woman too hard, the man too soft, these are going to be the things that you're going to see in the movie. Because like the Guardian, when the Guardian of the Galaxy came to him, he was like, love don't be lasting long. So he was kind of telling him like, you got to be a hero, but that means you can't be in love. And then he was saying you just got to have basically a shitty life. And he was like, no, I ain't. Well, I got to be that way. So his mind was not there yet. And then when he finally gets to that point, they put it in a way where it's supposed to be intimate, but he put the theory back in. So it was like, it was another again conscious pimping. They use that conscious pimping in there to make it like, I got to be with this woman, but it's only temporary. I got this energy, but it's only a temporary thing. You shouldn't have a temporary. This would be a long lasting thing. This is because she's looking out for you doing many missions. That make it all the more worth that this is your team player. She always going to be on your team. She got your back. I mean, I don't know if it hit y'all. I know it hit me when he was laying there. He's seeing her laying there and he's like, yo, you can't pick that mallet up no more. You pick that mallet up, you got to go. You're going to die. And she's like, after all that, he over there fighting the dude and she feeling him. You know what I'm saying? There's one of the mental art moves right here he doing right here. She's like feeling him, right? And then all of a sudden she's just like, forget it. I see the mallet. She grabbed the mallet, she gone. And that was like, wow, she getting ready to do it for, you know what I mean? Like for her man. And like they said earlier, will we do that in reverse? We might see it different. Okay, she a Virgo. Okay. Yeah, so here we're seeing, like I said, Thor was Leo. Here's the Virgo. And so that's why they're next to each other in the constellation. But you don't ever hear too much about these two. They only was like really quick with it. Okay, he's the Libra. He didn't have too much of a conversation in it, but he did have some. So pay attention to how he's balancing the conversation in it, because he was talking about how they weren't really as a team player. And he wasn't at the beginning. So, some of us have an ego when we thinking we with the team, yet we ain't putting no team players in.
That one part, and then goes back to the you was talking about the floor, right? So I noticed in this whole, their whole category of phase 4, right? So I noticed that, especially in Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, notice that when it's certain key points or certain levels of key points, they will show a certain type of mural.
Yes.
In a glass form that's on the wall somewhere. Like if we go to Doctor Strange, when they got to the Book of Ashanti, notice the mural that was like basically just out in the opening. Then you get to the city in this movie, and then where Zeus was standing on his chair or whatever, his little his ego chair, I would like to call it. Right behind him, you see that same type of design, but in a different formation or geometry.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And then when you go to this recent one that just came out, it's the same thing. Like you'll start to see that again. Is you just constantly see these particular patterns that's either on the floor. At the same time, it is on the floor, because that part, when it was in Omnipotent City, where it was chained up, and that whole thing with sacrifice was like clear as day. Like they just showed a version of what we would do, like in the sense of sacrifices in like certain type of cultures as well.
That's it. And you're seeing that's the mandala. They call it a mandala. They put a mandala or a mandala behind it or on it. Like we have, like let's say our natal chart. Your natal chart has a triangle, a square, a circle. And if you put that triangle and square in a circle, because after a while you get all those houses up there, get the shape of that That's your protector device. That's how you put it back on your body, and now you're protected. The same thing that they're utilizing in reverse would be like the pentagram or the pentagon, having that same symbolic symbol, because it's no longer the fear, fire, earth, air, and rain. It's the elements of how you utilize it. So now it's through solid, liquid, gas. What are you utilizing over there? Well, how are you utilizing it in that purpose? Okay, that's the Pisces. All right, Mantis is the Pisces. There was another part when they were showing the actual reenactment of Thor and Loki, and their father was passing away. Now, before they started that, they showed instruments. What was significant about that is that they were using everything old, but then they used a French horn. I said, they got a French horn? What are they doing? With a French horn in the middle of this. And then they got my brethren, what's the name again? Hell, what'd you say, the only brother that was in the movie?
You talking about Hondo?
Hondo. He's in it, but he's now portrayed as a Tamahu. That's how you see that they take your story and they flip it right in front of you, and you're still gonna let it, it's gonna be one of the things that just washed over. You ain't gonna think about it. But they're standing on the right of this on the stage, and so you got Thor and you got Loki. They both on a knee. Well, the pretend Loki and Thor, and they got an umbrella. The umbrella represents, of course, we know by Illuminati, the umbrella. So now it's supposed to be his cane, right? The whole connection to that. We know that also by Moses having a rod. So now he's with Odin. Odin's in the middle, and he's like, I meant to tell you about your sister. You have a sister. Then he said, all right, now I gotta go. I'm getting ready to turn to gold dust. I was like, oh man, he's over here telling about his energy. Right? He turns to gold, and then he just dusts it out. All right, and then a mirror pops up. There's describing again. So he was like, what is this vortex popping out of nowhere? But the mirror, of course, as we just said, it has symbols on it. So they got symbols on that. And then they finally, revealed that, and out comes his sister. Now his sister wearing green. So is she the Virgo? What's her sign? You know what I mean? And then her horns were up. So I'm like, oh, is she Taurus? Like, there's a lot that right there gives you more research to go by. And when she comes out, now Thor's like, Loki said, give her the hammer or whatever. So he throws the hammer towards her. And then this is slow motion and everything, so they had to like make it funny and whatnot. But she grabs it and she crushed that drink down to nothing. This is the same symbolic connection to Asar being cut into 14 pieces. Now, what's different is the phallus. Now, when we found about the 14 pieces, they were put back together, right? And the 13th piece was missing. That was the phallus. So it ended up being, the 14 piece was missing, so it only had 13 pieces. And they said the catfish had ate it. Well, now in the reverse, he's throwing the phallus, and she breaks that thing down in pieces. So it was knowing the storyline, where they got it from, and what they did and reverse it to where you're seeing it, but it's not like the same thing, even though it is. This is like a jock strap on the dude's head. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot that when you're like, is this perverted? They must have. No, he got a 3. They use this a lot. They see it on the handle of his sword. They got the 3 physical Pisces on that as the circles to still give you their interpretation along with some other interpretations. And you'll find this throughout the whole thing. When they're giving you symbols, it's not just symbols, it's sigils. So it's what we call sigilmancy. It's also basically used to get the hypnotic going, not knowing what you're looking at. But I guarantee once you start seeing these symbols, pull it out, see where it's coming from, and now that's your etymon, your origin. We also call it from the anagram, how you take words, separate them, and see what the word within the word, like the word Thor. Thor, right? It's Tahor. He has a horse aspect, but we ain't seeing it because he's really showing his chivalry. Even though in the comic book, he didn't show him like that. He was really more thuggish. And so they're cleaning up the act, even though this is all still based on a lie. Thor is not who he is. His name is really Baal, Baal. And that was the whole connection to how we found out about Bethel, Be the El, this is another connection to Freemason. This is another connection to Vatican. So the more we're studying it, you'll see that this is all Masonic, right? And they're using my son, mother and son. That's why there's a lot of the woman being as the character of a mother, yet there's no children in here. Now, the thing is, that's false. The comic book showed children. Thor has plenty of children. This movie showed none. So it was like as if he could be a bachelor, he could do what he want. This is some old imaginary thing, and we're just gonna let it run. And that's how it was like, dang, this ain't how it's supposed to be. But all right, let's just see how they go with it. Because they like want to finesse this the best they can. They're running out of time, y'all. They really ran out of time. They want to flip it back again so we'd be more interested. So that's why the Ant-Man came back out, you know, things like that. Please, if you got time, look at Pinocchio, because I'm gonna tap on that first before I even go into the Ant-Man or the Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange got some stuff in there too. If you notice, please go to the first one and that second one before you go into the even the Ant-Man, because Ant-Man is in Doctor Strange. So you can see how they basically are finagling all these things. Another one to go to is WandaVision. If you haven't seen no series of that, that's going to show you how reverse engineering got switched. So we said dumb us down. Well, this is how we got dumbed down right there. Watch that movie, you see everything. You see everything from black and white to color.
I agree. Yeah, because it's I forgot the point that I want to get across. Oh yeah, going to that Masonic thing. Like when we talking about Gore the Butcher, right? And it's like you may have or may not talked about it, but that one symbol that really stand out to me that truly made me realize it's a Masonic movie is when he had both the axe and the sword. When he grabbed the axe from Thor and he started walking, and you just watch his movements and how he had both the axe and the sword. The axe and the sword is something that I've seen in so many different pictures or symbols and things of that nature. And then going back to what you was talking about those the sigils, right? So in that realm of where Black Adam is, right? We already spoke on that part. So when I was watching the first Suicide Squad the other night, and that really popped up to me that on the Enchantress head is all the planetary sigils on her crown. When I seen that, I said, "Oh, I had paused the movie and I looked because I was like, am I tripping? Am I really tripping? Is that what I think it is?" And they really have it right in our face. I said, "Oh my God!" I was freaking out last night. I ain't gonna lie, because I was just like, "Yo, they really got this woman with all the planetary sigils on her head." On her head.
That's how they do it. They get you so deep, like even on Black Adam, with him being under the ground, they said, well, how is he a hero if they buried him? I was like, wait a minute, that was deep right there. And this dude was Ismael. So Ismael is like the connection to not knowing what Israel is. That's why that was very significant to find out the truth behind what Black Adam represent, like Shazam. We say Shazam, or the Sam or Sama. Sama is Buddha. So when we're using these words, Shazam is Sa and Ha put together is Shazam. So that was one of the other things. Mas is backwards, so that's Sam. Being that it was underneath the glyphs were what we look at anyway. So them glyphs that we were looking at was Aten, right? Aten, and how we also know it as the big head scientist, what they call Yakub. You can see the Nefertari, that's a Nefertari piece where the sun is shooting rays out and the unks were given, to people of the descent so that they'll have the, acquired knowledge. And that's why a lot of us became not just undertakers. That word undertaker is like a pall and a pallbearer. So that in itself, we know that this is the age that these people were admiring Ampu, and they took that and made Ampu, like over here, they call it the Wapanag. The Wapanag is connected to the Mayans or the Aztec connection, just like we know in America, in Africa, they also had that same connection known as Ampu. This is how we find out, like over here on this side, we have the jaguar. Over there on that side, we have the panther. And so now we see the difference of how the lineage was expressed from one side of the continent and not separated. It was on that lineage before the separation. So the same thing about this Norse god is showing you that there was giants walking amongst the earth. Somehow in this whole conversation, we're finding out that they wanted us not to know of it. So the Noah's flood, like Norse, you hear the word horse. Take that H out, you got Norse, like the top part of it. If you take the R out, you got nose. Norse or nose. This is Noah's. We're in the Noah's. We know the Noah's Ark because it's an arch thing. It's about an arch. It's about the rainbow. It's about the dragon, the serpent dragon. So instead of us focusing on it so much, they gave us a Paul, and they call it RuPaul. And they made a Robin, Peter, Pan, Paul concept by putting the women as men and men as women. And so now they call it like Dragon Ball Z. They got drag balls. Now, I didn't think about drag balls until I just saw it, just last night. And I said, dang, man, I thought I was done. Nope. The research is just to keep going with this rabbit hole. And you find out that, oh, shoot, they've been doing this stuff. So this is the black facing, our reality into what we call the Broadville versus Broadway. There was a Broadway where glamour and all of these things, and where people wore like a long dress to have it on the ground, but it was an example of the ballroom aspect. So prom, the ring ball, all these are connections to why did they have the Viking head? Why did they have this, antlers on the head? Well, this is the same significance as in America. We had a wolf on our head for the indigenous side. This is why it became over. We put the wolf on because it was cold. And once the winter kicked in, we put the wolf on our body because we knew that they could survive in the winter. And since we basically passed, we killed them off or whatever, we ended up start wearing it. This is the same thing they did in Dragon Ball Z. So you'll find out there's a lot of the throw it right in your face. You just got to go and do this research and you'll find out. But the snake, the dragon, they all represented this big, like I said, in the upper part of Tanzania. Just go, you could just check on mud fossils. It is a huge dragon. His body is mountains. It's the mountains. It's the scales. You can see the whole thing. I mean, and it's not. There's an actual European that's speaking on it, a Tamahu. It's just that the thing is, it is not just him that's speaking on it. There's a map that shows it. What Mansa Musa was a long time ago, a picture of him passing the gold out, and how we were talking about from the 1000s and that time frame where he was passing gold. The gold is created through bodies. So it's like a crud in the body that we, produce copper, silver, gold, all the basic elements. Now, if you notice, this same significance can come off of a dragon. We don't know so much about the dragon. So when we're digging for gold and all these things, we might be digging in a actual body. And that's a lot of what people are doing in Africa. You notice it to this day. They're digging and digging, and they're saying, oh, I got to go over here and get a gold mine and go, create this gold mine. So this experiment of the Remember the Alamo, the El Dorado, the story was written to us in Genesis 1:26. They've been talking about finding gold, and they also been talking about making a connection with, natural people. Yet he was calling them, people of the earth. I don't know what the name that you want to call them, but they were giving it as if these are high guardians or gods or angels or demigods coming down to the earth and then making that connection to those humans, but then finding gold and then telling them to go get the gold, mine the gold for them. So this is how you start to kind of like see the beginning of this movie where, dang, were we slaves or were we servants? And they're giving you that kind of aspect in how we're supposed to be thinking. Yeah, there we go. And how we're supposed to be thinking that these people that ruled the sky now got to rule the people that's on the earth. Now, you see how they're saying wild animals. This is how the scramble for Africa was put in our mind mentality to say that in the 1800s, scramble for Africa, that we were this human zoo trafficking energy, when that was created to make it on a docile mentality. You know, certain people, like how they said in the beginning, we weren't hurting anybody, we weren't harming nobody. And so they basically were showing them what full clothing on. They didn't have like less clothing. It was not a full clothing as you would think it is. It's a gown. It's not clothing like pants and shoes, and pants, shoes, and the shirt and the hat. It was like a gown. So it didn't have restriction on the body. It had a floetry about this body. And so when you see these people in the beginning, they're on that same level, and they got their headpieces on, so they got to be of some kind of royalty. And so for that, being like, okay, these must be the people that they were talking about in the Bible, but they ain't gonna tell you it because they don't want you to catch on. But then here's the other thing: why they blue? Why they got to be blue people? You see what I'm saying? So they're giving you an avatar thing without saying, hey, you saw Avatar. I know what you were looking at. Here, let me throw this in front of you, since that's a part of your consciousness already. These blue people will be saying the same indication of saying, well, then there's green people, blue people, black people. And he's saying green, black, blue, they're gods. They don't give us that indication, yet this is how we can still find out in our own research. The Olmec, what we call Ptah, and Rama. These are the black, blue, and the green. That's the other ways of now knowing. Once you start to find out the resource of why do these people are colored as if they're aliens. They're not aliens. They're just alienated to how we think. Now you can start to see frequency. Frequency is of different C's, different epigenetics that we were built in our body to say, I know you are from somewhere, even though you may not look like me. You got the same nose though. So we might have traveled, you know what I'm saying? And if you look at, it's called the Tombs of Saqqara. If you look that up, Tombs of Saqqara, they talk about Sekhmet. Now, Sekhmet is what they've been giving us a small fragrance of, as we bring it up in Black Panther, they talk about Basset. When they don't give you the whole ferocious lioness known as Sekhmet. Now, this is the same thing as saying Nefertari to Hatshepsut, having a beard, having the connection of saying, well, I gotta be in front of King Tut because he's young and he need protecting, and I gotta still keep this royalty going on. So Sekhmet ended up like Hatshepsut had to step in front as the mother. This is why even in Black Adam, you're hearing stories of the mother being the protector versus the father. And if you look up Hulk, the real story about the Hulk, that wasn't about a man. It was about a woman. She pushed her car over to get her child out of the car. And because of that, it made a jealousy amongst these professors who were like shrinks, and they wanted to figure out how can they get that same power that she got. But now if you notice, mama will take care of her child through thick and thin. The father, he might not do as well. Why? Because he's not as fully connected as the mother is. That umbilical cord that's connected to her, that made her have like invincible ability. You know what I mean? So if something happened to her baby, she'll know quick as a drop of a dime. She'll, oh, wait a minute, something going on. Let's go over here. And you'll be like, whoa, what's wrong? She'll have this intuition that's been picked up. And that's what's missing out of that movie. They're not going to show you that. They say they talk about love and they talk about thunder, yet you get all the way to the end of the movie, and now you see this man raising up a girl, and you're like, oh, okay, I see what y'all doing. So it's again reversing the roles. Now, if you notice, also, major thing, Phoenix. I know a lot of us been hearing the word Phoenix, have been throwing at us back and forth with Mulan. You hear about Phoenix. You're learning now that the sun is no longer S-O-N, it's the woman as the sun. And now the man as the moon. And that's what, even in here, you see the girl, she looked like you know, the girl being the moon. So yet she got masculine energy. So I'm like, oh, they ain't trick nobody. They're giving you the trait, but not giving you the face. So now it's up to you to go inside and think of them mentally before you start looking at them physically and say, oh, they masculine, oh, they feminine. No, let's start looking at divinity. What is divine about them? What makes them masculine? What makes them feminine? Now you get into the principles of those gods, as we call it, angels, because what's happening right now is we're calling our angels gods and our gods angels, and that's how we got distorted. Like everybody has a particular day, right? Let's say your day is Monday. Well, your Monday is connected to your Michael day, and so your Michael is really your speaker. You speak on the mic. Now, if you speak on the mic on a Monday, you might get some, you know, a reference behind that. And that's how you find out that you get in tune with your higher power. And now you're in tune. Now, this is where we say the three realms meet. You got your fire from your head, your heart, and your hips. Now, if you notice about Sekhmet can be that fiery energy that you need, yet that's in your hips. That's why Sekhmet is like a connection to your Sagittarius ability, the seeker that can have through 9 months birth, knowing from your 3 months of being into the existence before you got here. That's how mama knows she's pregnant before she even knew she was pregnant. You're like, how does she know she's pregnant? That's deep. So that's the spiritual body that wasn't here before you became a physical body. So when we're looking at the physical body, this physical body is coming through the Ra, R-A. That's why Sekhmet will be the mother of your Ra, which is the sunlight that comes off of the sun, which is your rays or your Ra. So that's how she's a mirror for the lion or lioness. And so when we heard about David or the Solomon's key, Solomon is known as an actual giant, and we wouldn't think that way. And even David as a giant. Now, of course, they made him separate, and then had David killed the Goliath, which was still the same. They took one man of energy and separated and make them all fight. So we'll think this one's supposed to be fighting now, I'm supposed to be fighting now, when it's a constellation thing happening. So when the dwarf or the giant became as a switch, it was only because there was a big bang in between. And so when a dwarf became big, it was because of the solar flares that was created between that. So that's how stages become to where you become like a full combustion. They show the atom bomb. Whenever you grow up in an age, you're basically shedding. So as a snake, you reshed yourself. Over 17 trillion cells redevelop over that one body. Now the thing is, it's not just one body. It's your head, your heart, and your hips. So that's why I was explaining how Sekhmet will be like at the bottom, your hips, right? Because that's the blue flame. And then you got the flame that's in between, which now can turn to red or orange, right? And now that red or orange will be where your Haru is at. And so with Ra, what we know as Ra being the head, because that's the first thing to take out, the head from out the womb, Ra will be the yellow, from the orange to the yellow. Because, you know, at its highest, brightest energy, there's this yellow, like you can put on your head. That's where you get Oshun from. Oshun is a yellow color. Now, think about this. White is turned to yellow because it was tainted, but not in a way that we think. Sometimes from someone who got touched, you can feel like you're tainted. Or for someone who got touched the wrong way, you can feel like you were tainted. Not to say there's a bad thing. It's also could be like, well, you're no longer, you know, a virgin. And so that's why this whole story was built around having virginity and those that have, you know, like as if you're lesser than if you don't have this virgin, you know, virgin queen or virgin woman. So these are the other things, of course, they kind of tapped around these things. And I'm glad they did, because it would have only kept this in a perverted way of wanting to still get it. Are we getting a message? You know what I'm saying? And so the women that was in this storyline, they were kind of stronger than the men. And that's okay. I'm going to take it for what it is. Yet for us, we got to see what we're looking at. So we won't say, okay, I like masculine women. How much masculine do you like? Because I ain't see none of them cook. I ain't seen none of them. The traits that we call feminine, I ain't really see too much of that, you know. And it was like a more of a dictator, go do this, go do that. If you don't do this, I'm gonna go do that. That kind of thing. So when you're watching movies, keep in mind it's you, but it's not you. And now you can fix what's not you. You know what I'm saying? Look into how, now that you know it's not you, yes, go into the different, let's say the deities that I just brought up. Nut, Geb, right? And Shu and Tefnut. That represents those four corners. Now, the ironic thing is they gave you Aries, Libra, Leo, and Aquarius as the four triangles. Now, the same thing, just like in Black Adam, they gave you 3 triangles, but they didn't give you the 4th triangle. So I'm like, dang, that's deep. They put stuff right in front of us, and it might be connected to another movie, and we wouldn't even know. It's just like, okay, well then that might have been a sequel. And be mindful of what day did they put movies out? What day did they release it? Is it in that constellation? So that it'll be ahead of you or us without knowing that that's why they put that there, so that we'll either be stagnant in that or we'll get an advancement out of it. And that's where you get your 3s from. Your 3 is your past, your present, and your near future. Now, if you don't know what your past is, you get stuck by present. And now your near future ain't gonna happen because the past ain't even there yet. So that's why you gotta have some kind of placement. A lot of us, knowing from inception, you carry your own little shamans, your own talismans, we call it, a talisman in your pocket. Well, this is the same thing as why they had animals around. Why did the birds fly around you? What was missing in the Thor is he didn't have a bird with him, but that's okay. We're just gonna take it for what it is. Look at what you got, right? And take the best of it. So that way, when you see something better, you know what to look for.
Yeah, he was given 2 goats.
Yeah, 2 goats. Yep.
He was given 2 goats instead of ravens or any type of dragon or things of that nature. I thought that was them. Like, they really gave him 2 goats to for his totem, and then
it was light and it was dark. So you're still getting your snakes without calling them that. You're still getting your Baphomet and putting that together without saying it as well.
It just goes into a lot of, and it's like, even though I didn't want to touch on it, but goes into that realm of, like, that whole thing about stolen legacy. So, like, from watching the Loki series, just basically just the last episode, and then taking it into this next movie, what I noticed is that what they're playing with is that whole lineage, but keeping it as the same person.
Right. Because they even switched up Zeus' role. Zeus supposed to had got that actual thunderbolt from a Cyclops, and that was to fight the Sephiroth. So there was so much missing, but they added their own flair to it to still keep the continuum, so they could still keep their focus on Thor. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a Thor movie for real. It's like they're gonna disregard their own Norse mythology so they could still explain it in the present for us to keep us in captivity towards this as a movie.
That goes like with this line is like dealing with the being known as he who remains when it comes to dealing with Loki, and how when it comes to that part with Loki being a part of this whole dynamics, it goes dealing with what is known as the Rainbow Bridge, or for them they call it the Bifrost, right? Because that's the only way you can reach eternity. Then I started going into the research of Marvel. So Marvel has these 2 particular beings known as Infinity and Eternity.
Yes.
These 2 beings are basically have been shown, like, we've got a glimpse of eternity, but people don't realize who Infinity is. And everything that's dealing with Loki, they show you exactly who Infinity is.
Right. Now, that's so keen because let's go into the character of Thor. He had a movie called Limitless, right? And then just on that based alone as the name, let's go into the character of Loki. Before Loki was the son of Mask. So they're showing you like a beginning stage of where they're coming from to now let's go into it further where the infinite and the eternity is another aspect of how we still gonna have movies that's related. We're not gonna put it in you right now to know it. We just got to get you to get something so that way when we do throw it out there, you know where we're at and what we're talking about. Just like for Loki, he got six series joint where 6 episodes on one series about him at Midgard. Now Midgard, as we say Asgard, you can hear the word, let's say Midgard, Asgard, so now he's on a Midgard, he's on the earth. And he's like saying, well, I'm the ruler of that, my brother's the ruler of Asgard. So he's letting you know what level where they're at. If you're on the green, right, the green represents earth, EARTH, HEART, the heart. So have a green heart, not a red heart. So him wearing the green, him being a variant, that's what I'm going to go into the next time I get up here. We're going to talk about Loki and how he's a variant in certain levels that now he has to, rediscover about himself in jumping time and space, because just like us, we time travel and we don't know how far we time travel until you look at, the certain likenesses, the characterizations of whether it's a building or the numbers that relate to you and how many times you probably done did this so many times that now the 1,000 become 1 or the 1 become 1,000. And that's the old separation from what we said 144,000 has fallen, when it's basically saying the 12 times 12 meridians. This is the same thing as saying 13 times 28, you get 364. That's the actual days, right? When they already gave us 12 months is supposed to be, out of this 12 months, you get 31 days, 30 days, 29 or 28 days, depends on the calendar every 4 years. That was the mess with the mind mentality, so that you wouldn't think, go ahead and just 13 times 28 and you get 364. That's what they're utilizing for the moon. So every time the moon actually is in a phase, whether it's waning or waxing, that's like when we're now coming into a new month or a new moon cycle. But we don't say new month as a new moon cycle. We end up running into their month cycles. So that's why we feel off of whatever the time frame is. And this is why it's also important to look at these movies and see what significant match do they have in this, because there probably is something telling you deeper than what the story can even give you, because they can't say it with their mouth. They might have to express it, but they can't. Like there was a part where they asked Loki, I think something about, like, what's your, like, are you related? Oh yeah, right in the beginning. They said in the beginning of Loki, where it starts off, they was like saying, are you from Earth? And he's like, who is this, who is this beautiful place that is here, or something like that. But they'll throw it in to say who, when who might not be the same way you write WHO. It might be HU. You know what I'm saying? So they'll give a deity in reference as if it's a question, and so you wouldn't know it. You know what I mean? Or they'll say it so much embedded in the word that it sounds like it's a regular word. Like saying the word duh. Duh is not really duh. Duh is Tahuti. So we're using a symbolic lettering to, like how my brother would say, if you know the letters, then you know there's space in between those letters. And since you know there's space in between those letters, it's just like saying CIA. What's the acronym for CIA? Well, if you was doing this like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, give me A for what? B for what? B for that. If you keep doing that, right, you're in a colonization of the way someone has you to think. Now it's time to come out of that and find out what acronyms you want to make it to become. So that way, when they say, is this meaning? You say, nah, because I use this as acronyms. You're using it for that meaning. And now that takes you out of their spells. A lot of people put spells in to make it as what we call a de facto. yet it doesn't have a de jure. It doesn't have a present for you. It's not present enough for you. So in order for you to be in it, you got to be present at what you're saying as well. Not just saying, oh, I'm going to go by what they're saying, because that could be the trick the whole entire time. Until you feel it, know it, will it, taste it, touch it, hear it, it don't have no reference to you. So that's why some of these things, as they call it, is an illusion until you say, oh, now I see why it's real to you. You know, you might make a big thing out of it and not know why, you know, this is a big thing to you. Well, some people will walk around and say, I don't know my zodiac sign, yet they found out this is a stubborn person. And they're like, why are you so stubborn? And it was like, no, I ain't nothing. And then they say, well, what's your sign? And then you find out, you know, I'm a Libra. And you're like, wait, what's wrong with Libra? Nothing. It's just the fact that they're known as donkey ears. So they might have a stubborn ability. Now, not saying that they're stubborn. It's just that you should be able to help yourself if you know your traits. If you don't know your traits, someone else is going to utilize that trait and now can even not only utilize it against you. And that's not cool. We'll find out that this is why people who say that they're intelligent, quote unquote, they're utilizing those type of zodiac signs on people, or their numerology against people, or have you come to court on a certain date that you just don't function right on, and you're just not aware of it. So when you go in there, you're basically caught into what we say as a sin, or sinus, as a sin of us, caught up into their ritual. People that put intent on certain things becomes a ritual. So what was the intent when you went into court? Oh, I'm gonna just try to beat it. That is a ritual. You're trying to beat means you're not going to win. Try is a triangle. So it's a TRY or a TR with a pyramid symbol. That's why the Y end up being a pyramid symbol. So when you use the word TRI, triumph, tribunal, use those words, and now it gets you out of those spells. You know, some people say maybe a lot. Get rid of that word, because that's not in Latin. Some of these words are just spells to carry us into more of a spell. Like, I'm gonna try and make it. Does that mean you're gonna actually make it? You know what I'm saying? So get around people who are speaking in the same aspect that say, okay, I know we're better at this. Then, okay, well, what do we do to get better at this? We can't just keep saying, oh, I know we're better at this. You're gonna get tired of hearing them talk like that. And that's how you find out, just like how Thor, when he went to Zeus, he was expecting this god to be a god. But he was like, nah, I'm really like a regular person. And of course, he didn't do that in front of everybody. He got up close and said, look, I'm just a regular person. Like, I am afraid, you know. And we find out that all of us got that regular something in us about us, you know, as they say, yet there's something else that make us God for them. So if you could pull the best out of them with that aspect, leave them be at that point, you know, and you could just walk away from that. It's up to them to say, I want to stay in this God form, or I'm gonna just go back to my deformed self. And, you know, not everybody's a deformed self. They just choose to be that way. A brother said, the way we stress ourselves is because we inflict it on our own self. And that's how you find out the evil man in there, how he was being so evil. He didn't realize he was causing damage. And he had to say, dang, I am, you know, bad for that. But of course, he didn't say, if y'all forgive me while I'm getting ready to make my daughter back into existence. So that was like kind of like one of them things that was his own way of apologizing by creating life instead of having death. So the ending to that was like saying, I'm gonna express my daughter, yet he did not say, Thor, raise her up how you wanted her to be. You know what I'm saying? Thor had to do that on his own. And because that was given to him like a guardian aspect, he had to become like a guardian already, because he was already doing it for the children. So to me, it's like saying, and you know, in my own way of speaking, and it don't have to be everybody's, he had to realize all the children he had to deal with, and now he got a child of his own. He didn't create the child, but now the child is like, I got to do this as if I'm uncle and father. Now, if you notice, a lot of us right now are in that same field as a man that's walking around, that's not in jail and not, you know, going through any hard ups. You end up having to be an uncle or a father to a family that's not even yours, so that we can continue. And that's the major thing about our legacy, getting us to keep our continuum going. And if you find like movies like this, you know, tap in, find what's the best out of it, pull it out. You know, if you see it for the worst of it, write it down so that you know, okay, you could dismiss this later, but you do got to recognize it so that way we won't overlook it. Because, you know, most people raise their children as they raise them, and you shouldn't raise your children anyway. You should rear your children. That way they could see the difference between right and wrong, and then they have a choice to see it, because wrong isn't wrong. It's just 3 lefts to equal 1 right. They might have to go into the past and be a present and now see future from what you was already telling them. You know, you forewarned them. They might not want to hear it at first because it came from your mouth. That's all. You know what I'm saying? It might have to come from somebody else's mouth. And I know it might frustrate, but didn't I just say, I just said that to you. You got to hear somebody else say it to you, huh? Okay, well, as long as you heard it. That's the other part. As long as you heard it. Give them the positive incentives. If you notice, when the daughter at the end, when Love at the end, she was like saying, he was saying, you know, put your shoes on. She was like, no, I'm wearing these. He's like, no, put your shoes on. And then she shot her little ray at him. Bow. And he's like, look at you. You know, mess this, you know, you messed this perfectly good pan up. He didn't say, what are you doing? Da-da-da. He didn't run back with the same emotion as if it did hit him. You know what I mean? So he kept it calm. He brought up what the damage she did, and then she was like, you know, I apologize, even though she didn't say that word. I'm just throwing that in there. And then it became a point. So now you're going to do the right thing. And she was like, yeah. So she went ahead and put the shoes on. And that's how it lets us know, if we're a guardian of our children really want to impress us. So the biggest thing you could do is disappoint them. You know what I mean? Don't disappoint your child. Just do what you're saying you're going to be truthful about. And if you're not truthful to it, you got to tell them. You got to let them know, all right, it didn't happen the way I expected. You know what I mean? I would say if it didn't happen the way you expected, don't continue to say, well, we're going to get it better, if that's not your intent. Look at your intention. Everything's a ritual. Be at your best with it, and that way you can carry it forward. The ending, the last thing I wanted to say was she had the mallet, and she painted it. And she was like, he's bored. It was boring looking. This is how you know our art is a big, major thing right now. If you're not into art, please start getting into it. That is your storyline, and you letting other people write it because you're not drawing it out. And you can't get mad at them because you ain't doing nothing with it. And you can't say they stole it because you ain't doing nothing with it. It's just sitting there. And if a toy was sitting right here the whole time and the child goes playing with it, this is now the reminder that you're a child. When that child goes picked it up and you're like, hey, that's mine. Well, now you're the child being childish. So now you got to find, how's your childlike ability? What you use to create that childlike ability where you're not going to take it from that child. You might make something more interesting. They might get more interested in that. Now, you might have did it to use it as a charm to get your item back. However, you might need to give somebody something in order to get something from them. So that's how that works as well. A lot of our younger generations, we say to our younger generation, they young, they don't know any better. Well, they're not going to respect you. So now you got to give them something in order to get that respect. You know what I'm saying? And we get that also from our elders who learn the way to value it better and pass it on. And as you notice, that's what Thor did. Now, I know it was a phallus, but I'm going to leave off of that. That is not just phallus. It was also knowledge. So he passed on the axe to her, and he held on to the mallet, and they went off and they ran some, let's go fight the evil, bad evil, whatever aspect. And here they go into their heroic moment to where this is the love they had as far as Love and Thunder. So it was pretty good. Like I said, as far as the whole analogy, because if this was a father and mother thing, if this was a father and daughter thing, that was a pretty good ending on how they ended that. Because usually when we find out family is mother and the child, which is either mother or either the daughter or the son. This end up being the father being with his daughter, which you don't end up seeing that in a lot of movies. So if they're showing that, look at that again, take it for what you know out of it. Fathers, spend more time with your daughters, you know, and even if it is your son, spend more time with him. And as you notice, like I said, don't be the one yelling and, you know, fussing at your child. You know, that was the other reason why he still had that long hair, because that's showing his feminine side. Not saying he's gay or anything. It's just showing that you can have a feminine side having long hair, and that's a principle. We are learning our principles through how soft the voice is, to how much in character we, you know, bring it out. Is it masculine or is it feminine? And how do we utilize that to where it's not a destruction, but it's connected to the divinity? And I give thanks to that. That was like major, period. Respect. But yeah, so next time I get up in here, we're gonna talk about Loki. I'm gonna go 1 through 6, get them all out of the way, because there's a lot of good information in there that we got to break that down. And then we're going to talk about Pinocchio, because that wraps up into why we even brought up, you know, Loki and Thor. These are great analogies. If you're a movie buff character, go into it, learn the movies, maybe look at it 3 times. You know, if you like to do something with me, I don't mind. We can do it together, chop it up, and you know, put something together. Because for real, the glyphs that we looked up on the walls are now on our movie screen. So now you can actually tap in faster and quicker, especially if you know the glyphs from in our past. And I would say Mutaba Ashby, check him out. He give you per M Haru. So when you want to know the actual, we said Medutat, that's the language. Like EM represents the owl. That's why the owls was what he was fighting, and they throwing their little fingers up, and they got an owl face, but they had a body. I was like, look at this mess. And they riding future like flying machines that we know as Tesla machines. They're throwing all that in front of our face to get us set up for a future, not knowing what we're looking at. But as a bird, that bird that's an owl is a representation of 270 degrees. The same thing they put on a dollar bill, that just like even for my brother Crip Jesus and Crumb TV MOI, they brought that up about how the Freemason, the Albert Pike is the dollar bill, the George Washington, Rod Hayes, he brought that out as well, and how they all connect. But the owl is also up there with the Vatican's crest. So up in the corner is an owl sitting in the corner. And that's how you see from Greece to the Vatican. There's 31, 3 and 1. So if you notice 13, 31, or 33, that's always going to be this conversation in a lot of the movies to keep us in that loop, to know that that's the vertebrae. They're going up the vertebrae, the Jacob's ladder. You learning from your head, your northern hemisphere, to your throat, your southern hemisphere. That's how these two connect. And yeah, that was big. That was big to see that in these movies and seeing what they're talking about. You know, are they talking about from your head going down to your feet or what? And like, again, check your zodiacs when you're watching a movie. You really find out, you know, what messages are coming through what body part. Yep, and I'm done.
All right. I appreciate everyone's gratitude for stopping in and speaking with us. Moonfox speaks. Her your closing and then close us out. Ramatel Quib.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Closing thoughts. Yeah, it's a lot of information, because it's like a lot of what the brother's talking about is like it's just all in plain sight. A lot of things that's like how you say in the realm of known as stolen legacy. A lot of what we see in a lot of these sci-fi movies, specifically sci-fi movies, and other forms of different formats. The one thing that I always, what help people see when it comes, especially dealing with the Four Horsemen, when the brother brought that up, every movie that we watch, all genres are of those four natures, of those four horsemen, every single one of them. Sometimes they'll play them all at once, but at the same time, every genre that we see is in those movies. I mean, and every one of those horsemen are in the movies. But to end it off, I definitely appreciate this time with you, brother. I wish I could have spoke a little bit more, but it's more so because I'm driving and doing a couple other things. But yeah, this dude is like really, yeah. But my apologies. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you, and everybody else. Definitely take your time, do your research, and Atara, my hotel.
That's it. I get thanks, bro. Also the connection. You know how we got books. Whether you get like this Freemason and the Vatican. This is a great reference book to jump into. The writer is Tommy Leon de Ponkins, and that's VICOMTE Leon LEON de DE Ponkins is PONCINS. But it says the duty of the knight, which is KNIGHT. That was another reason why we did the Vikings. The duty of the knight, Rose Cross is to combat the bastard Gnosticism inherent in Catholicism, which blinds the eye. That's why we talked about Thor with the eye of faith, turns hope into a pedestal, and charity into egoism. The secret teaching of the supreme leaders of Freemasonry may be summed up in these words: to establish the rights of man. Now remember, when they made man separate from men, M-E-N or M-I-N. The pervasion of which constitutes a usurpation against which all means of action are permissible. Holy Michael, the archangel, defends us in the day of battle. Be our safeguard against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May the Most High rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, Prince of the heavenly hosts, by the power of the Most High, thrust down into the hell of Satan and all wicked spirits who wander through the world for the ruin of souls. So these are the real reasons why we get down to breakage, because we need the verbiage first, and then how does it make sense when we see it in the movie? Why they got people sitting on the throne? You know, all of that's still a part of your storyline. We just didn't know where in that storyline did they get it from. So gravitating to certain things like this, even for the Wachitas, we are the Wachitas. It's indigenous about North America. You find out that a lot of the stuff they did in Africa, they also did over here in North America. So it became a replay to say they did it here first, then it went over there and did it there second, and then they reset the button so that they would think opposite. That's why it's good to actually have some kind of point of reference, and then you could go into what we call your psychic ability. So here's a psychic self-defense book. I done ate this book up a lot, but again, why the eyes turn blue is because it's dealing with the blue aura. Give me a second. I'm dealing with the blue aura, and the aura actually is going to align yourself to protect yourself. Once you get to a silver aura, now you get to the highest, as they call it, the supreme, like they say, the gray clouds. This is why the lightning bolt was used. So you see that the thunder, or how he said, now I gave you a witness of how my thunder, or that's the actual sound of thunder with lightning. This is your impulse. If you notice that you are vibratorial, but you're also pulse. And so when you work with that, it's your sign, that's one line, and the wave, that's the curve. Now the wave represents life, while the sign represents death. And so how to balance yourself is to sit deeper and longer breathing techniques of meditation. The more you do that, that's why the beginning was like Ogun, where he had his axe in the ground until he took his axe out, and now he was ready to fight. He was in a spiritual mode to learn his meditational self. That would have been the reason why he was fighting, so that he can still ground himself and not just fight forever. So I give thanks to all those that basically are on that same spiritual warrior path taken and want to know that acknowledgement of how do we, not look at it, we all got to suffer. No, and nobody got to suffer. Get what you can, right? And once you got it, pass it on so there could be a continuum. If not, you hoarding. And not a lot of people going to like you for that. So it depends on how much you think that this is how you qualify yourself, and would you say having people amongst you that are on the same, level as you are, because it is a point of saying, get the reference. Yet once you know it, what do you do with it? Are you acquired to, pass it on? Are you acquired to keep it? Are you going to be like these other people doing the same thing? Or are you going to actually be a guardian and start doing some stuff with it? The guard is one thing. A guardian is another. And then one who's gardener, that's another. So there's 3 realms that we're all going to either take, and be a part of it is going to be definitely helpful versus, run away from it and like you don't, that's not your mission. I give thanks to y'all. This is the idea of why we call myself Buddha. As I go into the 7th realm, find that snake, find out if it bit me, can I get an antidote? And I give thanks to y'all too, because without the pain, ain't no gain. I give thanks. Peace, wholeness, balance.